Two worlds are hurtling toward us. In one, we visit foreign lands and distant planets without leaving our homes. In the other, we become electronic shut-ins, cut off from humanity. In one world, a robot catches a murderer. In another world, robots become rogue warriors. Which world will be our destination as we journey through cyberspace? This is Hollywood's view of the war between man and technology, a nightmare world of bulletproof computerized robots playing a very one-sided war game. But north of Hollywood is Silicon Valley, a dream world of circuit boards and silicon chips, a quiet, bloodless battlefield in the war between people and computers. Computer-driven technology is what's taking us out of the real world and into unfamiliar terrain.
What's happened is that we've gotten so good at making technology. Technology's become so pervasive that it's stopped conforming to our rules of order. It seems to have a life of its own, and that's very frightening. We don't have computers to spit back life at us, to act real, to enhance unpredictability. We have them to make things more predictable.
People don't like reality. People go to the movies, people watch television, people listen to music, and they do all these things because basically they don't like where they've been put and they're trying to get rid of it. They'll say that they like reality, but their behavior belies that.
Like the movies, much of cyberspace is about leaving the real world behind and creating entirely synthetic worlds using the power of the computer. Whether a place to escape to or new territory to explore, modern technology may offer a perfect world, but has our love affair with it gone too far?
What we need to do is we need to recognize that technology isn't something we need in a rational way. We pretend it is. We always think that technology is our rational side. It's not at all. It's actually this thing that we've fallen in love with, this thing that's become like a talisman for us. We're kind of irrational about it because that's how love is. And I think as soon as we recognize that, we can actually improve our relationship to it and make it into something much more beautiful and fun and also safe.
Jaron wants us to climb aboard his cyberspace love train. For him, it's all about communing with your computer, empathizing with electronics, waking up to the wide world. You may not have a soft spot for your hard drive, but it doesn't matter. Someday, very soon, you're going to get personal with your PC, like it or not. Mark Weiser is a computer scientist at Xerox PARC in Palo Alto, California. He's been developing so-called invisible computers, which he predicts will become an essential part of everyday life.
We've been working on the next generation of computing, what happens after the personal computer. And we think it's going to be the invisible computer, the computer that's so easy to use, you don't even know you're using it, a computer that fits very naturally into your life. And I have one here with me. We call it the tab. And here's the tab. I'm driving along and I can access various kinds of information. For instance, I can check out a new restaurant. There's a new restaurant called Wraps that says it's on University Avenue in Palo Alto. Invisible computing is dawning now. We're having computers in lots of devices in our life already, but they're not yet interconnected. But this car I'm driving right now has 3 or 4 computers in it, operating different parts of it. And you'd be hard-pressed to find them, in fact. So invisible computing is already starting to happen. In the next 10 years, it will really take off.
Computers have changed our lives, but they've also made some of us scared of becoming slaves to technology. Cyberspace author Douglas Rushkoff thinks we have to turn the tables on the machines.
If we see ourselves as victims of our culture, then every extension of technology will be seen as further victimization of us by this other, by this dominator. If we first see ourselves as creative beings doing something, and that our lives are connected to some personal or even global purpose of moving towards greater states of awareness and creativity, then every piece of technology is an opportunity to extend our consciousness outward.
Which beats the alternative, some big brother techno-conspiracy theory of cyberspace.
If we go around hypnotized by this idea of a sort of Blade Runner vision of the future, where we're all going to be sort of living in sort of rusty, punk-inhabited sort of cybernetic nightmares, that's what we'll bring about, because we're hypnotized by that image. Whereas if we begin to understand that by using our ability to process information far, far more sophisticated and intelligent ways than we did before, that we can actually bring about a world that functions better, that we each have access to information that actually makes each of our individual lives better, then that'll happen. But we've got to maintain the optimistic view.
At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, scientists are optimistic about thought control. No, not computers that control our minds, but intelligent machines with a mind of their own. Professor Marvin Minsky is a computer guru and amateur pianist. He's also a leading figure in the world of artificial intelligence.
Computers are wonderful because they don't do anything in particular. Oh, come on, computer. And inside a computer, they're just little parts all connected in such a way that you can make them do anything you want by writing a program. People say computers can't think. Well, of course, computers now can't think because no one knows enough about thinking to program them. It's very important to open computers, you see, because otherwise people think that they're mysterious. Well, the point of a computer is that it doesn't do anything in itself except obey very simple instructions. But on a hard disk like this, you can put 50 million specific instructions and then make it do the most complicated things we can imagine. There's virtually nothing we can imagine how to do that we can't program.
Despite the advances, computers still have difficulty dealing with the unexpected. Making computers that can cope is the ultimate goal of computer scientists. Not just machines that sort things out, but machines that make decisions. The most intelligent computer to date only has the intelligence of a bumblebee. And the Japanese say they've simulated one with the thinking ability of a kitten.
There's a field called artificial intelligence. And if you look at snapshots of it every 10 years, you see that every 10 years it's understanding a substantial amount more about how a machine could do the things people do. Well, if you look 10 more decades ahead, well, of course you can't. What people will do in 100 years, as Arthur Clarke put it, will look like magic to us. But I think that when we understand how the brain works, it'll be easy to make them.
Intelligent machines working on their own may not arrive in our lifetime, but some astonishing developments already have, like electronic imaging implants, which help those with limited sight to see again. Cyberpunk artists and writers have taken this plug-in technology to extremes by imagining a world where all experience is electronic and all reality virtual. It was William Gibson who invented the word cyberspace for his sci-fi novel, Neuromancer. His future is about what's happening to us now.
I'm trying to find a way to describe what's happening to us now that won't frighten people. So one of the things I do is I say, well, this is about the future. It's not now, it's about the future. And that sort of lulls the reader. And then I sort of feed them the contemporary reality. I think that if we could call up our great-grandparents and say, hey folks, this is where I live now, what do you think? I think they would run screaming.
Coming up, cyborgs of the past, present, and future when cyberspace returns. "70 years ago, filmmaker Fritz Lang gave us his vision of hell set in the year 2000. When he made his film, Metropolis, some people worshiped the industrial machine the way today's techno-evangelists worship the computer. In Lang's underground world, the worker's job is to feed these giant machines. The workers revolt, but the machines have to be kept going, so the mad scientist replaces the workers with something more reliable, a cyborg, something that will never complain and never break down. In a stroke of evil genius, he then fits the robot with the body, mind, and big, great eyes of Maria, who he sends out to charm the revolting workers. The combination of human being and computer, the cyborg, was here to stay. Back to the Future in 1996. Spanish performance artist Marcel Liroca has wired himself into a computer at a London theater and wants his art to say something about people and the technology of cyberspace. At the click of a mouse, paying members of the audience can control his body movements. What this wired performance artist and some science fiction writers are worried about is what we might become if cyberspace technology takes over our lives.
I have moments, I suspect that a lot of us have moments where I look at where we seem to be going and I'm just overcome with something that I can't even express. And I think that's probably what drives my writing more than anything else, is an attempt to express that. It's an equal admixture of dread and ecstasy.
This is the sci-fi future of the police. Strong, dependable, and downloaded straight into a computer. RoboCop, the ultimate cop. But using robots in police work is already here.
There was a famous case in the United States of a murderer. He was in a house and was resisting. A robot was sent into the house to take pictures of him and to locate him in the house. And so it was the first, to my knowledge, the first use of a robot in a police operation. And so we should expect to see this more and more happening as computers become autonomous and they gain artificial intelligence and they begin taking humans out of certain activities, particularly dangerous activities.
For now, the men and women in blue are the ones who uphold the law. But the U.S. Army takes intelligent machines very seriously.
I mean, it is bad public relations for the military to lose lives. And so that will prompt the creation of synthetic soldiers, but that will take us little by little towards true predatory machines in the future. I mean, we're crossing a line that is going to be hard to cross back.
There it goes.
During the Gulf War, computer-guided Tomahawk missiles cruised into Baghdad from hundreds of miles away and were accurate to within a few yards. But even the most sophisticated missiles depend on humans to guide them to their target. What happens when weapons become truly autonomous, when they can make their own decisions about what they're going to attack?
Today, autonomous weapons are still controlled from far away. They are still remote-controlled drones, used mostly, for instance, by the Israeli army as intelligence-gathering devices. But they are beginning to have their own weaponry on board. They are beginning to make certain decisions as to whether, once they spot a radar installation, to shoot it. And the moment they do that, they will become predatory machines. They will become machines that prey on humans.
So, Hollywood's view of law enforcement. Coming soon to a precinct near you? Video games are by no means child's play. When cyberspace returns. Back to cyberspace on TLC. Video games, computerized entertainment for kids. But the artists who create these games aren't just painting pretty pictures, and the technology behind them is far from innocent. In the Gulf War, smart bombs could wing their way down a ventilator shaft, like something from a giant video game. The designers of arcade games use sophisticated images and invest heavily in their product. This game, Thunderhawk 2, cost around $1 million to develop and took a year to get to the marketplace. The designers aim to make you believe you're in the cockpit, like the flight simulators real pilots train on. Cyberspace technology lets pilots learn from mistakes that would cost them their lives in battle. These simulators react to the pilot's every move to give a true impression of flight. Graphic displays surround him and show the landscape from his point of view. As he works the controls, the display changes. The simulator can also throw him a curveball, rough weather or mechanical failure. It's this technology developed for military use that's now being used in civilian simulators.
All virtual reality simulators were originated in the military as pilot training devices. I mean, if you're going to fly a $2 billion airplane, it doesn't really pay to have a rookie, fly it for the first time to learn. So as far as a training device, virtual reality has been used in the military much earlier was used than in arcade games or in consumer products.
Simulators are used by other members of the armed forces. Tank crews all have to be kept battle ready and trained on equipment that's becoming more and more complex. It costs $3,000 to fire any shell in this Challenger tank. Mistakes in the real thing can be very expensive.
Target. Target stop. Bullet. Ready time. Firing.
Bravo 2-1. Communications check, over. Bravo 2-1. Begin the mission.
Now, video game designers and military designers are working hand in hand on this technology. This mass-market desert tank game was developed by games company Sega with the American defense contractor Lockheed Martin. It uses the same technology that Lockheed built into their multi-million-dollar military simulators. With the thawing of the Cold War and the cuts in the defense budget, Lockheed is looking for other markets for its 3D warfare simulations. Video games are a huge part of the entertainment industry, $16 billion and growing, twice the size of Hollywood's $8 billion film industry. Game designers are duking it out with Hollywood for the entertainment dollar.
The trouble is with traditional computer games, it is a very singular experience. When you see someone really into a game, they tend to block off the whole outside world and just see this screen in front of them. But that is actually changing radically now, because we've got more and more and more games coming out which are actually multiplayer, which allow me to play against you. I'm on my computer, you're on your computer, or we're both playing on the same computer, and that becomes much more of a social experience. What we're doing is we're using tricks to convince you, the games player, that this is someone that's real, this is someone you can interact with, this is someone who's virtual, who changes and reacts to what you do and what's happening around them. And we can do that, and it's quite amazing how effective that is. If we're creating realities, virtual realities within our games, soon you actually looking at a monitor just will not be good enough. I mean, the ultimate really will be is tapping directly into the brain. So how much longer will it be that we'll be able to actually plug our little game into the back of our neck? And you could be in a ridiculous state where the game that you're playing is so real, feels so real, so you're not going to be able to see it, but you'll be able to feel it. You'll be able to smell it. It'll be just like experiencing real life. That people may not want to come back to reality, may not want to come out of the game. It'll just be so wonderful. They may be the lord of a whole kingdom, and they maybe have people pandering to them within the game, and they come out of the game and they're sitting in a council house with no food to eat. So that is the ultimate. A few years off though, I think.
Fight! One, ready, go!
In Japan, some young people are already plugged into their games. They take this electronic living to the limit.
I sense this tendency among younger generations of Japanese people that they prefer to enclose themselves into some kind of solipsistic, enclosed, airtight world. And they consider any intrusion a nuisance. In other words, they're becoming more and more incapable of striking up intimate human relationships. And I think that's a serious social problem.
It's a big enough problem that the Japanese have a word for video game addicts, otaku. Some spend several hours every day playing Virtual Fighter. It's more than just entertainment. The players live through the characters.
We can manipulate the characters in the game really easily. My fingers can move them as quickly as I think about them. I can directly influence the movement of characters, and the other player can express his personality in the same way. These virtual fighters are like our own way of talking to each other. It's a common language. I enjoy this game and play it almost every day.
Better run home to Mama now. 1, 2, ready, go!
difficult to describe why I like this game so much. It's too complicated, really. But somehow I can find my own identity with these games' characters.
Fans in Tokyo come out into the real world for what they call cosplay. Hundreds of game addicts gather to parade in costumes based on characters from their favorite video games.
I'm dressed like Morrigan from the combat game Vampire Hunter, and I'm Ray from the same game. I like playing video games, and I go all the time to the arcade to play combat games. I chose this character because I saw a famous cosplayer in the same costume, and I really liked it, so I made one for myself. Everyone says how good it is, so now I dress up as this character almost all the time.
Animated versions of these characters have made their way around the world in cartoons and computer games to make animation Japan's biggest cultural export. At home, Japan's wired generation is being blamed for the rise in street crime as they steal to feed their habit. More and more, they're living in their electronic world.
I've got this feeling that many advocates of cyberspace are actually dreaming of somehow making this complete emancipation from this physical universe, and that is from your own body, and to somehow immigrate inside cyberspace where you could live completely free of any physical restriction, and that is to live forever. But I think that is a far-fetched dream.
Mark Sluka writes about cyberspace.
What I'm uncomfortable with is this sort of this religious almost vision of cyberspace as some new frontier, some new realm that we will all inhabit as human beings. And the reason I think I'm uncomfortable with that is that human beings are primarily physical. We are, and always have been, and I believe will remain for a long time to come, physical creatures. We communicate face to face. There's an awful lot of communication that goes on which is nonverbal, unspoken. What strikes me in all the hype that we hear about cyberspace and what it can accomplish is the lack of debate about what it cannot accomplish. There's more missing in cyberspace, much more, than is present.
What is present in lots of video games is violence. Computer games are taking up more of our leisure time than ever, whether in arcades like these or in the home. You can now even play games through cable networks. But what effect do the games have on the young people who are their greatest fans? What happens to kids who spend hours in front of games like Mortal Kombat is a hot issue around the world. By the age of 10, the average American child has watched 8,000 murders, and that's on television alone. In recent years, the campaign against violence in computer games has been gaining ground.
Watching television is basically a passive exercise. Playing a video game is active. Children are not just sitting back and watching. They are fully engaged in the violence when they play these video games. In fact, they help to make the violence happen, and they are rewarded for being violent.
Sonya wins.
A voluntary rating system for games is now in place in the U.S. so parents can stop their kids from buying the most violent ones. But parents may be fighting a losing battle. This is how Douglas Trumbull and Stanley Kubrick imagined virtual reality in 1968 when they created this sequence for the film 2001: A Space Odyssey.
The word cyberspace to me means some kind of alternate universe. It can be a place of fairy tales and fantasies and dreams and out-of-body experiences and flying and all kinds of releasing kind of euphoria experiences that allow us to transcend the limitations of reality.
Virtual reality has been a long time coming, and the techno-evangelists hail its arrival. Most of it is virtual unreality, taking you spinning through space, discovering lost civilizations, and doing all those things you could never get insurance for. Just put on a helmet and start dreaming. More than the movies, it's an experience that you're actually part of. Right now we sit back for the ride, but the days of plugging this stuff directly into our brain may not be far away.
A virtual reality, 100% synthetic, which does not exist at all, except somewhere in a computer screen. When you consider all these things, you actually have to ask yourself, is it possible that we'll end up maneuvering ourselves into some aphysical space? And my answer is yes, it's quite possible. But then the next question for someone like myself is, well, great, we've maneuvered ourselves there. Is it a good thing? Will we be happy when we've gotten there?
Pull that on, down on your head. Pull it down there. There you go, you're in.
There are still many questions about how we can best use this technology, but for all of us, there's no doubt it provides new worlds to explore. VR lets you discover places and landscapes you would otherwise never see in ways you could only dream about. For this child on an electronic magic carpet ride through old Baghdad, it's fun and educational. This VR simulator is based on Disney's animated feature Aladdin, but the VR version goes way beyond the movie. There are other places we can get to only through virtual reality, like the planet Venus, 13 million miles away. Scientists from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab produced this 3D simulation of Venus to save you the trip.
Venus is out there being digitized, but this digital model, this virtual reality of Venus is what's actually being explored on Earth.
Even farther from Earth is Mars. Based on what we now know, Mars looks like this. But on Independence Day, 1997, the Mars Pathfinder will start sending down new pictures. NASA will build these into a VR or telepresence simulator so you can go looking for the little green men yourself.
With telepresence, we think that we can really expand the range of access to the surface of Mars from a scientific perspective, not just in terms of operating, relatively simple robots to do things like construction, but really to do scientific field work.
Astronauts already exploit VR training for space shuttle missions. They use helmets and data gloves to get used to weightlessness. The helmets provide a computer-generated picture of the inside of the shuttle with scenes from every situation the astronauts will find themselves in. They can climb their way through the spacecraft by moving their hands in the gloves. The data gloves were developed by Jaron Lanier, artist and computer scientist, who in the mid-1980s pioneered much of the technology for virtual reality. With his dreadlocks and spacey stage performances, Jaron may not be your idea of a pioneering scientist, but it's people like him who are coming up with some of the most interesting ways to use VR.
The thing you have to understand about virtual reality is that it's not a free ride. People often use analogies like roller coasters or drugs or other experiences that carry you along by their force. Virtual reality is not like that. If you're in virtual reality and you don't do anything, you don't perceive anything. The only thing that makes virtual reality feel real is your activity.
Some virtual environments on the market let you walk around distant sites, like Britain's Stonehenge, bringing this ancient monument to life.
It's when you move around and explore, that's how the illusion is created. If it weren't for that, virtual reality would be an inferior medium to others. It just doesn't look as good, doesn't sound as good, it can't compare to movies in terms of just sheer quality. It's the interactivity that makes it real. In fact, when you use virtual reality for a long period of time, you get very tired because you have to be very physical in using it. It's much more like riding a bicycle than it is like riding on a roller coaster.
This VR experience is more like scuba diving. Next on cyberspace. Back to cyberspace on TLC. This virtuality cafe in Berlin, Germany, is a bar packed with VR simulators. Patrons can play VR games and take VR rides. They may be the leisure centers of the future, but they'll take some getting used to.
We're uncomfortable because we're still awkward with it. We're not natives in this new space. We're not natives to Siberia, except for our kids. But I'm very hopeful that as we become more comfortable in these new territories of human experience, we'll start to see them as the very most natural things indeed.
I tend to look at it from the other angle. It's not just, do we need virtual reality, do we need cyberspace, but why are we so interested in them? Why are we so compelled by these worlds?
Guess what? Welcome to Megalopolis. The high-speed chase is on, and it's up to you to catch the criminals.
Well, my answer is that we're interested in them specifically because the actual human community is deteriorating right before our eyes. It's increasingly violent, it's decentered, it's mobile, we're scattered all over the globe. We're lost in this increasingly modern world, and therefore, virtual communities become increasingly appealing to us.
Our real world, often overcrowded and sometimes dangerous, is what the dream merchants of cyberspace want to sell us a ticket away from, to forget about what's going on around us and escape into our computer screens or virtual headsets or video games. Most people don't want all their reality virtual or all their experience electronic, but those who do, and those who can afford it, are now finding the latest VR simulations incredibly seductive. This is one of the most interesting of the new VR worlds, called Osmos. Rather than travel with astronauts in outer space, it lets you soar through inner space. Thousands of people have tried it in galleries and museums, and to many, it's an antidote to the frantic world of computer entertainment. The designer of this new world is Shar Davies, a Canadian artist. She worked with her team for over a year to develop this synthesis of computer technology and personal art. Davies is aiming to give us a virtual experience that matches the almost weightless sensation of scuba diving. First, you put on this suit. Then, to move around the world of Osmos, all you have to do is breathe. This man is suiting up for the latest VR craze, a ride through inner space.
So the first part of the vest here is a little breathing sensor. So as he breathes in, it expands, and as he breathes out, it contracts. And by this movement, we can measure how much air Georges has in his lungs. This allows us in the space to move Georges up when his lungs are full, or down when his lungs are empty. This is inspired by scuba diving. So I'll put Georges on the helmet here. Okay. So he's got the helmet on, he's just going to tighten it down. And once he's put the helmet on, he gets a sense that there's graphics surrounding him above and below, left and right. And by tracking with the sensors and drawing the appropriate things, we provide the illusion that he's actually completely surrounded by this computer-generated space.
Everything down here is created by 3D computer graphics. The leaves, the fireflies, the trees, the rocks. Even the music is generated in real time as you move around this virtual space. Shar Davies started out as a painter, and it was 20 years before she began to work with computers. It's her sensibility as an artist that makes Osmose so different. Artistic works like Osmose are bankrolled by computer companies because they see the potential for profit. For the artist, the game provides a whole new form of expression.
What drew me to this medium is the fact that it encircles you. It is enveloping. And I think artists, for a reason I don't understand, are either blessed or condemned. Sometimes it feels like one, sometimes it feels like the other, to express their experiences to other people.
Osmose has 12 worlds to explore in about 20 minutes. There has to be a limit because most people want to float around this virtual world indefinitely. The middle world is a forest glade with a tree and a pond. As you move closer to the tree, you enter a world of plant cells in the leaves and branches. Breathing in lifts you to the top level, the text world, Shar Davies' favorite poems and quotations in many languages. And breathing out takes you down to the lowest level, the world of the programming code.
By using breathing, by using deep breathing, people become more and more relaxed when they're in this space. They have a tendency to give up the desire to be in control and to race around and do things, and they seem to go into a kind of a free fall where there's more of an emphasis on being rather than doing.
The first few minutes you have to adjust to the space, and then after a while I kind of completely forgot where I was or what I was doing. You know, like I wasn't thinking that I was in a museum or anything like that. I'm thinking, okay, I'm in here, I'm in this space, I'm moving around, I'm swimming. And just, I don't know, it was incredible. It was sort of like dying and going to heaven or something.
It affects people in a very emotional way, which I didn't expect. I would say at least half a dozen people have come up to me after their immersive experience and told me that they sat down and cried alone because they were so overcome with emotion.
That's so sad when it pulls away from you and you're left. Fantastic. I'm disorientated. It's the best flying dream I've ever had. You control your own little private universe. You control it, that's what's so great about it.
using computers in this way can produce virtual worlds very different from those we've seen before in cyberspace. The technology doesn't have to isolate. Instead, it can enhance the sense of being human.
Coming up, the Southside Strangler strikes, and police use DNA testing for the first time to convict a killer. Join the investigation with medical detectives next on TLC.